Hi folks, and welcome to Mountain Talk here on WMMT. I'm Parker Hobson. Today on the show, we visit with two extraordinary, creative, and massively talented Appalachian women. Later, we'll sit down with the great West Virginia singer-songwriter Hazel Dickens to hear about her life and the stories behind some of her songs. But first today, we'll be spending time with the one-of-a-kind Knott County storyteller, singer, and culture bearer, Florida Slone. Born in 1923, Florida came down with typhoid fever as a child, and doctors at the time thought the illness would damage her brain, and so much so that they thought she would never be able to speak plainly. As a result, Florida's mom kept her at home and out of school. And those early years of isolation, where she was cut off from spoken communication with even the closest members of her family, caused Florida to develop just a really remarkable sense of observation. Later, when she was able to learn to speak, language just poured out of her. She'd make up stories and songs about every little thing in her life, from hearing bird calls to driving a car to playing bingo, and just about anything and everything in between. Today on Mountain Talk, we visit with Florida through a radio adaptation of the 1993 Appalshop film, Homemade Tales, Songs and Sayings of Florida Slone, which was directed by Anthony Slone Angelyn DeBord. Here is the piece.
My uncle used to come and tell stories, and we used to get together and have a good time, just telling old stories, about ghosts and just everything,
Would it scare you?
Yeah, back in them days it did, but now I know there ain't no ghost, and I know there ain't no witches because, a lot of people are afraid of the dead and witches, but I'm not, because I go out and get me a blanket. I wouldn't care to go up to a graveyard, lay down at night and sleep. I am not afraid of the dead people. It's the ones alive I'm afraid of. And so I just love the stories, If everybody in the world was on TV, there'd be nobody out there to look at me. It'd be funny as it could be if everybody in the world was on TV. Well, my parents' name was Andy and Tennessee Slone, and I was born in the head of Hollybush. After I was about 6 months old, Poppy and Mommy moved down to Lackey, and that was about 1930 then, I guess, somewhere around there, and there was some sort of disease went around that killed just about all the children at my age, and I was about 18 months old. I could walk, talk, and so my black hair had all shedded off, and I had blonde hair at that time, and it was curly. And so I took this disease, ever what it was. I've heard Mommy say it's some sort of fever. And I got so poor that they could count my teeth through my upper lip. And they'd have to turn me with a sheet. And so I died one morning. And they went and laid me out because I didn't have no pulse, no heartbeat or anything. And back them days, they didn't have any undertakers. They'd just, make you coffins out of wood and cotton and fix them up pretty. And so my grandfather went to get my coffin made and to get my grave dug. And so Mommy and my grandmother was there, and they was hurt over me. Well, when the rag dried out of my face, where they put alcohol and they'd wet a white rag and spread it over the dead people's face with the pennies on their eyes. That's the way they fixed me. And so when the alcohol had sort of dried out of the rag, my mother went to get the rag off my face, and when she did, she seen my lips quiver. And she hollered at my grandma, and she said, "Now you better come quick," said, "Florida's still alive." So my grandmother come, and she started working with me, and I come alive. But I had this fever so bad to where that I couldn't walk, I couldn't talk. And about 3 years later, my brother was born, one next to me, Brother Garland. And Well, he could walk and talk and everything before I could because I had to crawl and I couldn't talk. And the doctors told Mommy that at that time that I'd never walk, talk, nor, wouldn't anymore, said I wouldn't have any mind or anything. So I guess y'all can tell that. When I seen my little brothers and sisters younger than I was, talking good, and everything talking pretty and plain, and me going around I couldn't talk, well, it put me in misery. I was ashamed, and I'd go to school and I was ashamed to play with kids or ashamed to be with them because they could talk pretty and plain and I couldn't, and they'd all make fun of me.
Teacher, teacher, please tell me, where have all the butterflies gone?
They couldn't understand what I'd say, and so they just wouldn't try. Just stick me in the back corner and just any way to get rid of me. And then when the end of the school come, even though I'd just go maybe a couple of weeks a year, then they'd give me a pass, pass me on to another grade to get rid of me is what it was. Now, I never did have any help. Oh, little children may gone away, but they'll come back again someday. Someday, and it won't be long, all the little flowers will come back home. Brother Garland, no, he helped me. Me and him get out and, well, even my parents didn't even know that we were done this, and he'd help me, and he'd say, now you got to speak this word, like this, and he'd tell me. I'd speak like him till I learned to speak it, and it wasn't long till I could talk as good as him. Poppy always hunted way ahead of a holler to live, and back in them days we didn't even have good roads. You'd have to, a sled and a mule's all you'd have to get in and out, and as I look back, I used to feel sort of hurt because Mommy'd send them all to school except me and Brother Garland, but now today I just thank God that she did keep us at home and help her because Mommy needed that help. Sometimes she'd be pregnant and there wouldn't be nobody around, and so I'm just thankful to God today when I look back that she kept us at home and where we could help her. And when I was real little, I wasn't big enough to get out. Well, I used to go out and see all these pretty clouds going by, and I'd wonder, well, someday when I get grown, I'm going up to the top of the hill on a real hot day, and I'm going to reach out there and get me a big snowball. I always thought there were snowballs. And you see, where you grow up, if you get education and things like that, you understand how the world's made and everything, and when you don't have education, well, you don't know.
You make it up.
Yeah. You have to make up your stories where you're not educated. Have to make them up from what you know. Back this summer, outside of the bedroom in there was a apple tree, and I called it the Birds' Courthouse. Because every morning out there, I'd hear them birds, and there'd be a little bird up there about middle ways, and there's an awful crowd of birds around that poor little thing, and the birds would be hollering, cheater, 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 cheater. And the poor little bird would go, surrender, surrender. And then about the time they'd leave that poor little bird alone, that big red bird up in the top and holler out, where did you go, go, go? And then when they'd hush, that red bird hush, while down there on the ground, he'd hear katydids and say, did you, did you, did you, did you, did you, did you? And then it'd start all over again, that old red bird. He'd holler down again, where did you go, 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 go? But a red bird hollers so many different ways. Back in February, they was hollering, skip, skip, skip-a-do-do-do. And then they started hollering, pure, 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 do-do-do. And then you listen to them, and all year they have a different holler about every month. One kept following me from winter to winter, but I don't know, he'd act like it wouldn't tell me something, really. I'd go there and put my hand right on that window and talk to it, and it would not move. And I loved it. I'd go and talk to it, and he'd follow me all day, and then I made a song about it. For the wind that blows and the rain that falls makes me think of the little cardinal bird's calls. He come and sat on my windowsill. The songs he would sing, you could hear over the hills. Till one day he brought a mate. They both sung as if their hearts would break. I know it's hard to believe that a little cardinal bird would sing to me. Well, you know, I had a real beautiful dream. You know, I was dreaming of searching for stones, and I dreamt of seeing a old big pile of pretty stones you ever looked at. And I dreamt I took my hand and pushed back, and I got a little small stone about the size of that. And I dreamt when I pushed it back, it was so pretty that it just lit up the whole world. It was so pretty. And I dreamt that everybody in the world wanted that stone. And I dreamt that when I got it in my hand, that I closed my hand and I said I'd never let go of that stone as long as I live. And I was so happy because I had found the stone that I had been searching for. And dreams, people has to all time remember that some of them may not mean much to them, but now there's a lot of them is deep and they're precious to you. And some of them's a comfort to you through life. There's a music that I have heard, and it's like water, like dripping water. You know, there's a part in the Bible where it reads about that, but I have heard it. And they say it's a voice, music from heaven. I've heard that, but every time I hear it, there's a death. It hardly ever happens for somebody dies. But it's something that I wish that the whole world could hear this because it's beautiful. When I heard it, I was only about 9 years old, and I went and told Mommy that one of us was going to die, me or her baby. She was expecting a baby, and I told her, I said, me or your baby, one's going to die, Mommy. And she said, why? I said, I heard the prettiest music from heaven I ever heard in my life. And then a few days later, my little sister was born. She only lived 13 days, and she died. Like when my mother died, why, it was pretty hard, you know. And I always thought, well, when someday or another, I hope God will help me to where I can make a song about her. And then one night it come to me. And when it come to me, I sung it about all night, one whole night. Last night I dreamed I died and went to heaven way up there. I dreamed I seen my mother rocking in a golden rocking chair. I seen Mother, she was not alone. Jesus kept watch over her and her heavenly home. Now I know she's with Jesus away up there. I dreamed I seen my mother rocking in a golden rocking chair. Mother, she worked so hard here in this land to raise her children. She done the best she can. Now I know she's with Jesus away up there. I dreamed I seen my mother rocking in a golden rocking chair. Sweet Lord, sweet chariot, come, Lord, carry me home. Poppy, every evening, he'd get his song book, hymn book, and he'd sing. We'd all sing, get around and sing. The one I remember most of all is Precious Memories. And we'd have a good time just singing, you know. Back then, though, if you sung any kind of song, it had to be a Christian song or they'd whoop you. Yeah, they thought it was, you know, big sin if you sung just a little jig or something. You had to be a Christian hymn. But I love to sing them back used to. I used to go around all day singing, making my songs as I went, you know. Some people taking vacations, a pleasure all this life to see. I'd rather be on the mountain and feel the heavenly breeze. I'd rather be on the mountain and feel the heavenly breeze. Thank you, God, thank you for the bees. First time when I met Austin, it was real funny, in the way I went over to stay with my aunt. She lived up in the head of Trace Branch in Caney Creek over at Pippa Passes. And so me and my cousin Nan, we went over to a little store they had over in the head of Hollywood. She had to go across the hill, and I went over there and we had to go over and get some groceries. And I got over there and I seen Austin, but I thought he was green, his dad. I got back to the house over there where my aunt lived, and I said to her, I said, you know what? I said, Green Slone's the prettiest man I ever looked at. She started laughing. I described him to her, and she went and started laughing. She said, well, that's Austin. Said, he's not married. Well, my uncle went and told Austin about him. Well, he come over there the next day to borrow a horse's collar. And he come over to borrow a horse's collar. And then we walked over to the store and we got started dating. And we only dated about 2 weeks and then we got married. He was 27 and I was 17. And when we was a-dating, he'd bring me some Cracker Jacks. He'd bring me a box of Cracker Jacks. And so there was a big rock up there in Trace Ranch where we'd sit there, and my cousin was with us. She'd sit there and talk with us, Nan. And we'd sit there to eat Cracker Jacks. And I'll tell you right now, if you got a girl you love real good, you better take her some Cracker Jacks. I tell you, death leaves beautiful memories. And we just don't realize that till they're gone. So now it's like a movie in my life. I can remember, I go back through lots of work and days we went a ginseng hunting and just days we was raising our children up, and it's a beautiful memory to just think back, In a land of wondrous beauty, that far I've seen my fondest dreams, where the air is pure and real, loaded with the breath of flowers. They are blooming by the fountain, sprinkled with the heavenly showers. Oh, how sweetly Jesus whispers, take thy cross, thou need not fear. For I've tried this way before you, and your glories lingers near. Well, when me and Austin first got married when we moved to Hollywood, and he'd go all the way into Beaver and work on pipelines and log, do stuff like that, and he'd come back and I'd make my garden, taking care of the children. And so we'd raise us a lot of cattle on the side and raise us a garden, a few calves, and we'd keep our hogs, chickens. Where we lived in there, it was so far in there. Time you'd have to carry your baby and little children walk out there, you couldn't hardly get out and in. And so I just wouldn't ever go because it didn't. To me, I'd rather just stayed at the house and kept the children there and enjoy them. And on Sunday, then all the children around and come in, and we'd tell jokes and play games, and they enjoyed just getting out and watching nature around, watching the birds fly and how they built nests. And they'd enjoy just the nature then, and watch bugs, bugs make hills, and just little things like that. People would get started, and you'd enjoy that all day long. I went out this morning to breathe the morning air. Funny thoughts come through my head, they've come from everywhere. Oh, the corn was shooting and the beans was running and the cabbages laughed and said, can't beat me 'cause I'm already ahead. I looked down to the other garden and see an awful race. The watermelons and cucumbers was running all over the place. What funny thoughts come through my head, they were coming from the start. Up on the hill I thought I heard a dog would bark. I enjoyed it, and a lot of people now says to me, how in the world do you raise your children? Well, when you love them, you just don't look at it work like it's work, or I didn't. I'd go ahead and take care of my children and enjoy them.
I tried to raise them the same way that, you know, Mommy and Daddy raised us, but I think the times have just changed to where it's impossible to think they're going to be like us, because they live in a whole new world.
Well,
because like I live in Michigan, my kids were born in Michigan in the city, and that's so much different than what we were raised, that I guess sometimes, you know, I do find myself thinking, well, they should be more like me. Well, they're not going to be, because it was a totally different world they were born into than what I dealt with, you know.
Mm-hmm. So it's that security and that love that we always had, even though we didn't have a lot of other things, maybe. But we didn't miss it, or I sure didn't.
Them days, all of them was together, and I was happy, but I didn't know, you know, the happiest days of my life was when they was all running around here playing. I didn't know it back then, but now it's. I wished I had them back. Them a playing and cutting up, well, that'd sound like better music to me. All my children, they are grown up and grown. They seek in this world to live a life of their own. In my memories, I visit them each day. I can see all the families as they all gather around. I can see all the children as they all run and play. Thank God for the memories God didn't take away. If I'd known back then what I know today, I'd raise my children better in many ways. But it's all in the past now. Here's all I can say. Thank God for the memories God didn't take away. Yes, I watched my children grow up. One by one they went away. Till my home is so empty today. But I smile and say, Lord, I try to make a new start. They're not gone from me, they'll always be in my heart. Then I'd gladly say, thank God for the memories God didn't take away.
You know, as a kid, you know, it was funny, and I look back on it now, you know, and I can remember little bits and pieces of, and sometimes I don't know if it's something I actually remembered or something I dreamed, you know.
I can, in my mind, always visit Hollybush, and that was the time for me when, you know, things were perfect. I had my mom and my dad, I had my brothers and sisters, and my needs were met, and there was happiness, there was love. It was like a paradise almost, I guess. But we can't go back, but in our minds we can always visit those places, and I do quite often.
The children, when they'd come in from school, they would come in and study their books and things, because Austin, he'd tell them, now if you all study real hard, you can get through school. And he just, some way or another, he would work with them to where that they would learn.
And he used to even tell us to bring your books home so that he could read them. And so everybody used to think we were always taking books home because we liked homework, but that wasn't the case. We'd take them for him to read them.
And read history and geography. And
right, yeah, because he loved like history and stuff. And then Mommy, you know, she'd always say, well, I can look at the pictures. I don't know what it said.
I couldn't be more proud of my mom. She's really trying to make a big effort to go back to school, to do something that she's always wanted to.
You know, where Daddy did everything, she couldn't write checks. you know, and stuff, or even driving, you know, like she sings Learn to Drive and stuff. And I do think, you know, the older you get, it's a little harder, but when you see someone that age doing that, it makes you realize that you can do whatever you want if you really want to bad enough.
Because so when you're able to read books and things, you see it broadens your mind to where you can think better and everything. It makes you feel good about yourself. Hi-oh, skipped-a-maloo, stepped on the gas and away I flew. Tried to drive my whole life through. Hi-oh, skipped-a-maloo. Hi-oh, skipped-a-maloo, stepped on the gas and away I flew. Tried to drive my whole life through. Hi-oh, skipped-a-maloo. I enjoy myself, and when God has given you talents, I think it's a sin to not use it myself. And, you know, you can enjoy yourself because we're here just for a little while anyway. And I believe in enjoying it, trying to every step of the way. Traveling down the road of life, I travel alone, trying to be happy deep within. But here I am, Lord, I bingoed again. Playing bingo, some people says it's bad, but I play bingo, try to be happy instead of sad. Trying to be happy deep within, but here I am, Lord, I bingoed again. Playing bingo and I feel just fine. I play bingo, try to exercise my mind. Trying to be happy deep within, but here I am, Lord, I bingoed again. Yes, here I am, Lord, I bingoed again.
You've been listening to Florida Slone of Knott County, Kentucky, through a radio adaptation of the Appalshop film, Homemade Tales, Songs and Sayings of Florida Slone, which was directed by Anthony Slone and Angelyn DeBord. To see the film in full, check out Appalshop's YouTube page. We're going to take a quick break here to hear from some folks who make community radio possible, but stay tuned for more Mountain Talk after the break. Welcome back to Mountain Talk here on WMMT. I'm Parker Hobson. For the second half of our show today, we visit with another remarkable Appalachian, the great West Virginia singer and songwriter Hazel Dickens. Hazel was an influential and pioneering woman in bluegrass and country music. She was a talented songwriter and performer, and she had arguably one of the most powerful and recognizable voices in all of American folk music. She sang about hard work, hard times, and hearty souls, with many songs focused on her native West Virginia. She was also active in political and labor issues, lending herself and her songs to picket lines and union rallies. And she was named a National Heritage Award winner back in 2001. Up next on Mountain Talk, we sit down for a unique conversation with Hazel to hear about her background in West Virginia, her unique identity as someone from the mountains, but also who left and lived elsewhere. And we'll hear the stories behind some of her most memorable songs. This piece we'll hear is a radio adaptation of an interview that was conducted for the Appalshop film, Hazel Dickens, It's Hard to Tell the Singer from the Song. That film was made in 2000 by Appalshop's Mimi Pickering, who also led this interview.
Well, I was thinking when you were talking about the, the political and the non-political songs about, what Archie Green had said about Sarah Gunning and stuff, that her songs were so powerful and strong because they came out of the tradition, the music, and oftentimes the melody came from the tradition and the way she expressed herself, yet she, added the political. Mm-hmm. Do you think yours are? I feel that way about your songs. That
yes, there's. I think it comes with enlightenment and education. I don't mean education, college education. I mean just making yourself aware of what's going on in the world. And I think once that you start experiencing that freedom and freedom of expression, that side of you will come out. But if it's repressed, and if you allow it to be repressed, it's not going to come out. I think many people feel it. And many people know they're being exploited when they are, but they are not allowed to say anything about it, or they won't allow themselves to say anything about it because they don't want to be fired. And I saw much of that in the factories and the sweat shops that I worked in when I was younger. And it's there. If you don't want to look at it, I mean, you can hide your head in the sand, but it's exploitation is what it is. You can call it anything you want to.
A lot of your songs are about working women. Were you influenced by sort of the women's movement stuff, or what do you think, where does that come from?
I think it was just a catalyst. I think many women feel like that. And there's always these things that can bring it out of you. And but I think some of the first things that I wrote, I don't think I was really thinking about any kind of movement at all. You know, I think I was just, I'd been raised in a family with 6 brothers and a father, so you got 7 men in the family right there. And, you know, and they were very dominant. And in the beginning, you know, before I could see when I was a child that my sisters, my mother and my sisters, as they came up, were scrubbing over a board, and they were washing and ironing and had those shirts starched and hanging in the closet for the guys to put on. And they did a lot of sitting around in the wintertime, and I saw my mother out there working, going through the snow to milk the cow, and then coming and cooking the supper, and she never seemed to have that kind of free time. And so I think it came naturally. And, you know, later on, I did get a lot of support from the women's movement, for which I was very thankful for. It was like, you know, me saying to myself, well, I don't know if I should put this out there. But then they came along, they said, this is all right. We like what you're doing, you know, keep on doing it. And I think it gave me a lot more incentive to continue it. It was nice having that support.
Well, it seems like both in your music and your life, you kind of broke from. You're both very traditional, but you didn't do all the things you were supposed to do. Maybe
No,
either.
It's true.
Was that hard for someone growing up in a very traditional kind of family?
Yeah, it made you kind of be a, you know, I don't want to say a black sheep, but because they were always very loving towards me and pretty much accepting. They just didn't understand a lot of times what I was about. But, and a lot of it probably was my fault by not sharing a lot, because me thinking that they probably would not understand some things, and the politics. But you know, you take it a step at a time, and but you know, I was never rejected. I can't say that, but it was quite different, branching out on my own like that, and departing from the traditional way in which I was raised. And there's a lot of things with the tradition that I can't accept. but there's a lot of it that I do and I love, and that's why I continue to come home, is to be able to participate in the good part of it, and then still have my other life where I can go out and do things that I believe in that are not part of the tradition.
Tell me a little, you were talking a little bit about your father and all the music that maybe tell me a little bit about his musical background and influence on you as we talk about tradition here.
Mm-hmm. Well, he was raised in the very, very old tradition, the mountain style of music, the mountain religion. You know, it was very primitive. And that's the kind that he loved. He didn't want us listening to any of this new stuff. I can remember listening to the Grand Ole Opry, and because Ernest Tubb, of course, was the new thing, and he didn't really want me in the beginning to listen to him. And he liked Uncle Dave Macon and all of the some of the old string bands and the Monroe Brothers, and later on Bill Monroe, and so I began to, of course, listen to that too, and was something that became part of my life later on, and I ended up very much liking old-time music and bluegrass. And I think that his early promptings, you know, to listen to this and listen to the old-time music and just sort of putting it on the radio and almost like making us listen to it. He never said you have to listen to this, but it was always around in some old records that they had. And taking us to church to listen to the unaccompanied singing in the beginning. And I think that was where the influence came from. When I began writing, I definitely saw the influence there.
You were saying that you thought he had maybe known the really old stuff, the ballads and stuff, but that he didn't sing that anymore when you were...
When he got religion, he didn't. You know, before that, I think he did. I don't remember it because I was too young, but he used to go around when he was single and right after he got married and play at parties. They used to have house parties where they would move all the furniture out and they'd have one empty room, and he played old-time banjo, and he played for the dances. And later on, when he got religion and he would pick up the banjo, it was generally something that was kind of comical, like Arkansas Traveler, things, so he could laugh and I guess some way feel less guilty, like he wasn't taking it serious. But he continued to be very strong in the church. He would lead the hymns sometime and line them out, and you know, that's one thing that we remember most about his singing, was those unaccompanied hymns that he sang.
Now, when you're writing a song, have you developed kind of how does it happen? How do you go about doing it?
Well, I really don't have an organized way because I'm not that kind of a writer, and I'm not a real prolific writer. But things come to me constantly, and sometime I'll go write it down, or I'll have a tape machine and just put it on fragments or a verse. And if I sometime have a melody, like most of the time I have a melody that comes sometime with the words. And it does not start out with a whole song. Generally starts out with a line or two or a verse. Like one that I wrote recently, I had read in this little minute from the church. I had wanted to go back and see what my father wrote, because this was back in the early 60s when this came out. And I happened to see this little piece in there that this woman had written about her obsession with the old songs and how she felt about them, and how she seemed to get out of the singing what the preachers got out of the preaching. And I really thought, well, you know, that really says it for me. You should, and I made a little note in my notebook that you should write a song about this. This is really interesting, that somebody who you've never met, and of course she's passed away now, and she was not even from around here, but she did belong to the Primitive Baptist Church. And that you could feel the same way. There's worlds and worlds of difference in the two of you. So I did, and I did end up writing a song about it. And it says, I love to sing the old songs that I sang down through the years. It was sort of about, the beginning was like about her life. And then I ended up adding my own to it about my life. So you get ideas from different places, and sometimes I really don't know where they come from at all. They just appear, and I'm just happy that they appear. I'm not going to question it.
Well, let's talk about a few of them. You were, I know I've got you talking some about black lung, but maybe we could do that again, because we're here in West Virginia and all, and with the family. Tell me a little bit about, and that was one of your first political ones. Tell me about writing. What was black lung about?
Well, it was really for my oldest brother, who died just a short ways from here over in Bluefield, of black lung. And also I have two brother-in-laws that died with black lung. And I'm sure many relatives that did. And I had come back when I heard that he was very, very sick and didn't have very long to live. And I'd come back to visit him for a few days. And I was just so struck by going into that apartment and just seeing how poverty-stricken that he was after having worked all his life. And he, I guess he was in his, probably his 50s, late 50s, and had nothing to show for it at all. In fact, he didn't have enough money to bury himself. And after I went back, a while after that, it just kept haunting me. I just kept seeing that scene. It just kept running over in my mind like a movie. And I just sat down. It was a real gut feeling that I had about the whole situation, and it just spilled out on paper.
But never his friend. He's lived a hard life, and hard he'll die. Black lungs done got him. His time is nigh. Black lung, you're just biding your time. Soon all this suffering I'll leave behind, but I can't help but wonder what God had in mind to send such a devil to claim this soul of mine. He went to,
and I didn't try to write it exact or anything. It just came. Whatever came out, I wrote it down on the paper, and I was glad that I didn't try to edit myself or, do any of that while I was writing it. And that's the best way, actually, if you can just almost like free associating, and you just put it down and you can edit it later, and you'll get your best songs like that.
That one, it seems to have so much personal feeling for you that it's hard for you even to sing at times.
It is. Yeah, it's very emotional to sing.
Another mining song that I really like is the Mannington Mines. How'd you come to write that?
Well, I had not been to Mannington, but I'd read it in the paper, and I was just really struck by that scene, just seeing you know, all these miners that had to be sealed up in that mine, and I was just really incensed by it, and it didn't have to happen, and that was the main thing. And I just kept, in my mind's eye, I kept seeing all of these little kids that were going to grow up and have the same thing maybe happen to them. And my brother-in-law had told me that I believe that the Bluefield Daily Telegraph and WHIS was owned by the same people, I believe. It was sort of like one head, one way of thinking, and that sometime that they didn't print in the paper exactly what was happening. They might try to clean it up a little bit before they printed it. And as we talked and talked, he didn't want me really to say anything about it because he was afraid he'd get in trouble. And so I waited a long time before I put that verse in there. And I don't know if he ever knew that it came from him. But it says, we read in the paper and the radio tells us to raise our children to be miners as well. Tell them how safe the mines are today, and you'd be like Daddy, bring home a big pay. And it was my conversations with him and his working in the mines, and how he could see what was happening, but he felt very much afraid to be talking about it because he didn't want to lose his job. And it was another one of those songs that came the same way. I mean, it was just, you know, I couldn't have held it back. It was just, I think I would have birthed that song no matter what. It was no aborting it. It just had to happen.
We read in the paper and the radio tells us to raise our children to be miners as well. Tell them how safe the mines are today, and to be like Daddy, bring home a big pay. Now don't you believe them, my boy, that story's a lie. Remember the disaster at the Mannington mine, where 78 miners were burned alive because of unsafe conditions. Your daddy died.
Another coal mining one that I had just heard you sing fairly recently is that Coal Miner's Grave.
It was about the mine wars in 1913. And there were two graves that these people had stumbled on up in the woods, and they had been just the briars and all the brush had covered them over, and they uncovered them, and they had been commended, these two miners, by the UMWA, and they had given their lives, you know, for the UMWA, and I just thought, you know, how curious that they would, having been so heroic, you know, if they'd been in the service, they would have gotten a medal, you know, and how that it was sad that they were left up there in the woods to be forgotten like that, and that maybe they deserved a song. So it came a little bit at a time that I just really didn't know how it was going to develop, and but that image just kept coming back to me again and again, and it was eventually cleaned. The graves were cleaned off, and they had a ceremony up there, and it turned out well at the end.
And there's no one to claim it or care if he's gone away. he was only a miner, and it's only a coal miner's grave. So pay no attention, it's only an old miner's grave. Pay no attention to the briars and the weeds, let them stay. 'Cause who's gonna miss him? Care that he's gone away. For he was only a miner, and it's only a coal miner's grave.
One of the ones I think of as one of your trademarks is Working Girl Blues. How did that come to be written?
Well, Working Girl Blues I wrote while I was doing retail work in Washington, D.C., and I was feeling very frustrated because when I got home at night, I was just so tired that I didn't feel like playing the guitar or composing songs, and I felt like I was really getting boxed in, that I was not spending enough time with the music, and I really wanted to be doing the music instead of working in that store. And so one day I was doing inventory, and I just turned the inventory sheet over and began writing that song. I got the early Monday morning working blues. And some of the girls that worked for me began coming to some of my concerts when I did local things. And the first time I sang that song, they didn't know that I had written it about that shop. And they were just so amazed when I told the story, and they began singing it along with me at the concert. And then a lot of the days when we left the shop, they would begin singing that song. They just loved it. So I was real pleased. I was real pleased that I wrote it, because particularly for somebody that had experienced the same shop, the same kind of work that we did, and with very little pay. And we definitely were not getting as much as the men got. In fact, he hired a man to come in, his old college buddy, at the same time I was there, and gave him $50 more on the week than I was getting. So that song came, it was from a real reality. So I wrote it for us, for me and the girls.
Oh, well, the weekend was too short, but I can't choose. When the Lord made the working girl, He made the blues. Well, I'm tired of working my life away and giving somebody else all of my pay, while they get rich on the profits that I lose, and leaving me here with the working girl blues.
There's a couple of songs about West Virginia I wanted to ask you about. What was Hills of Home?
I think it was about my coming back here after many years and seeing a lot of decay. And, there'd been a lot of mines that had been worked out, and people moving away, and and some strip mining, and just people having to leave. They didn't want to leave home, but they had to leave because there was no work. And just very similar to, like West Virginia, my home, was sort of in the same vein. Just people who would much rather be living among the hills that they loved, the people they grew up in, the kinds of people that they grew up with, and in the tradition that they grew up with. And they were not allowed to do that because they couldn't make a living there.
Families that scattered, parted and gone, left a lot of good things to wither away back home. Can't you feel those hills around you? Can't you feel a touch of home? And don't you wish you'd never gone? There are some things memories can't bring home. Hills of home, hills of home. Families scattered off and gone. These old hills that have been passed by, well, they've seen their share of living in their time.
The songs seem like they have a little bit of mixed feelings too about.
Ambivalence, yeah. Wondering if you can go home again, yeah. It definitely has some of that, yeah.
As nostalgic as you are for that, could you really do it?
Could you really do it? Yeah. Yeah, there's always that contradiction in me, because I've always had, I think, a straddle the fence, as they say, that some people straddle the fence, that they have one foot in the city and one foot in the country. And they are always torn about whether they should go back and live it where they came from, you know, in that tradition, and be among those people who have never left. And then the contradiction goes a step further, and they say, well, but I like the freedom that I've had since I left, and I'm out in the world, and I can go and come as I please. You know, which life should I have? They know when they go back, they can have a certain amount of freedom, but it will never be the same. And that maybe they will only be accepted if they go back into the tradition and be as they were when they lived there. Of course, they can't do that because they've changed too much. So
You find yourself in that place?
a lot of times, yeah. And trying to keep a balance and hold on to the things that I like about the tradition, but also hold on to what I have come to believe and the freedom that I have attained, and not give any of that up either.
You've been hearing the great West Virginia singer-songwriter Hazel Dickens in conversation with Appalshop's Mimi Pickering. This piece was made from an interview that was an outtake from the Appalshop film Hazel Dickens, It's Hard to Tell the Singer from the Song, which was directed by Mimi Pickering. To see that film in full, check out Appalshop's YouTube page. And our thanks to the Appalshop Archive for making this interview available. And that's it for Mountain Talk today. Thanks so much for listening. For WMMT, I'm Parker Hobson.